Chapter 7. He shows by his examples that even infancy is prone to sin. Hearken, O God, alas for the sins of men. Man saith this, and thou dost compassionate him. For thou didst create him, but didst not create the sin that is in him. Who bringeth to my remembrance the sin of my infancy? For before thee none is free from sin, not even the infant which has lived but a day upon the earth. I feel like this is the key to this chapter. He starts with this as his premise. Not as a, this isn't a, this is his premise, and he uses the evidence of crying, etc., as evidence of sin, rather than in the previous chapters as evidence of a trajectory, an incompletion in the child that is completed through relationship, which is always just the case with man. We're restless till we rest in God. But along the step, there are incremental steps in that direction of those who are pointed or image God in some way, of which our mother's milk is the first. That the highest spiritual food is food. The highest spiritual experience is an eating and a drinking, of which milk is a foreshadowing. And so, of course, we cry out for it, but that's not a sinful disposition. A sinful disposition would be the rejection of the milk, not the deep and abiding hunger for it. So this chapter is insane, but sorry, I'll continue. Who bringeth this to my remembrance? Doth not each little one, in whom I behold that which I do not remember of myself? In what then did I sin? Is it that I cried for the breast? If I should now so cry, I now indeed for the breast, but the food suitable to my years, I should be most justly laughed at and rebuked. What I then did deserve rebuke. But as I could not understand those who rebuked me, neither custom nor reason suffered me to be rebuked. This is just insane. The idea that, of course, one stage of development is not suitable to another. If you're still crying for your mother's milk when you're 35, it's not the same as crying for your mother's milk when you're 3. And it's not because there's something wrong with, 3 months. And it's not because there's something wrong with crying for your mother's milk when there's 3 months. When you're 3 months, it's because if you don't get the milk, you'll die. And so it's an existential cry. Do you think God sees as sinful existential cries for help? No. That's crazy. That's insane. But once again, the only way I can see this, that such an intelligent man would have such a bad take, would be if he thought he had to have that take in order to be faithful to the scriptures. And it's probably because of maybe the Latin translation he was working with. I don't know. That there's the fact that he wasn't using the Septuagint, I'm not sure. For as we grow, we root out and cast from us such habits. I have not seen anyone who is wise, when purging anything else, cast away the good. Or was it good, even for a time, to strive to get by crying that which, if given, would be hurtful? To be bitterly indignant that those who were free and its elders, and those to whom it owed its being, besides many others wiser than it, who would not give way to the nod of its good pleasure, were not subject unto it. To endeavor to harm by struggling as much as it could because of those commands, because those commands were not obeyed, which only could have been obeyed to its hurt. Then in the weakness of the infant's limbs and not in its will lies its innocency. No, it's in its stage of development. It's not in the fact that it cries for its mother's milk. Well, first of all, when babies are truly infants, they only cry when there's a reason. Either they're in pain, or they're tired, or they're hungry, or they're thirsty. That's it. Existential needs. And even when a child is a little bit older, it's still due to need for connection. It's usually for some sort of existential need that the child is crying. And if that child gets so securely attached and then later in life does things that that are sinful, that's one thing. But to say that incompletion and desire to be completed by relationships is problematic is insane. I myself have seen and known an infant to be jealous, though it could not speak. It became pale and cast bitter looks on its foster brother. Who is ignorant of this? Mothers and nurses tell us that they appease these things, but by I know not what remedies. And may this be taken for innocence, that when the fountain of milk is flowing fresh and abundant, one who has need should not be allowed to share it, though needing that nourishment to sustain life. Once again, I mean, maybe it is due to the fall that children have to, all of us have to contend with scarcity. Maybe, but that's due to death, not to sin, not to culpability. Maybe it is due to the effects of sin, and thus death, or rather the effects of death producing sin. But this itself, just because a child needs and is afraid that if a foster child next to it is taking away the attention that is theirs, that would be theirs if the other child weren't there, that's a very normal response. Yet we look leniently on these things, not because they are faults, nor because the faults are small, but because they will vanish as age increases. For although you may allow these things now, you could not bear them with equanimity if found in an older person. Thou, therefore, O Lord my God, who gavest life to the infant, and a frame which, as we see, thou hast endowed with senses, compacted with limbs, beautified with form, and for its general good and safety hast introduced all vital energies, thou commandest me to praise thee for these things, to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praise unto thy name, O Most High. For thou art a God omnipotent and good, though thou hadst done naught but these things, which none other can do but thou, who alone madest all things, O thou most fair, who madest all things fair, and orderest all according to thy law. This period, then, of my life, O Lord, of which I have no remembrance, which I believe on word of others, and which I guess from other infants, it chagrins me. True though the guess be, to reckon in this life of mine, which I lead in this world, insomuch as, in the darkness of my forgetfulness, it is like to that which I passed in my mother's womb. But if I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me, where, I pray thee, O God, O my God, where, Lord, or when was I, thy servant innocent? But behold, I pass by that time, for what have I to do with that, the memories of which I cannot recall? So once again, he's talking about innocence, that this baby could not be innocent. Incompleteness is not culpability. It's not. And a desire for completion is actually a divine impulse. It's the impulse that draws us to God. The impulse in the child to seek his mother's milk and to cry out when he doesn't receive it is a divine impulse. It's the impulse that leads to our healing. If this is true, what he's saying, then the same thing that leads a child to be jealous over another child getting his mother's milk and to cry out for milk and for sleep and for comfort, the same impulse that leads to all those behaviors is the one that drives people to God, as the one who fulfills all overabundantly and who, when seeking the highest things, finds all other things fulfilled underneath the umbrella of that highest thing. You cannot both declare culpable the same impulse in a child that will eventually lead to that child's salvation, and that self-same impulse to call it the source of their damnation. That's crazy. Especially when those impulses are oriented towards the correct things for that stage of development in that child, which is toward their parents, towards the milk, towards sleep, towards love. And they're loving them in the right order. It's right that the child seeks its mother's milk as something divine.